Coming up on today's show, we have a chat with aerial performers Mona and Colm. Local percussionist Mark Barfoot performs live right here in the pit. We also have a chat with fire performer and contemporary dancer Tony Elwin. And of course, some more local fashion. But coming up first on the show, our host Carolyn sits down with Mona and Colm, founders of aerial performance company Newton's Ladder, to have a little chat about how the company got started.
So how did you guys kind of start by creating this company? What was the initial idea behind it?
It kind of evolved, I think. We started, Mona's background is dance, and I came from sound and music. But professionally, I was just working in theatres and rigging, and obviously we came to aerial later in our lives, late 20s really, and it was always going to just be a bit of a hobby.
That's how it always starts.
An alternative way to stay fit, but you know, we're both performers, so it just naturally one thing led to another, and we just discovered that it was a medium we could really get creative in. Yeah. And yeah, if you're, you know, performing, hanging off stuff, then the rigging side of that developed, and it all just kind of grew. Yeah. You know, helping out other people with their aerial work, and then creating our own aerial work, and just trying to push the envelope really of what people were doing, and yeah, it just grew and grew and grew really.
Yeah. So you said that you were both performers kind of before you started the company.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing you guys were self-employed.
Yeah.
And you're still self-employed then. How do you guys find that? Obviously you've got to be quite stern with yourself, be your own boss, and you've kind of got to set yourself like your own limits and things. We've, you know, interviewed quite a lot of people, all of which are self-employed, and it kind of does come with its own challenges along the way, doesn't it? How do you guys find working as a team, being self-employed together? Are you kind of helping each other along, motivating each other? Is it easy?
Well, I would say it has its good days and it has its tough days, like with anything. And I think, you know, it is that thing of kind of pursuing your dream, but that isn't always the easy option, you know. So it's that sense of like, oh, follow your dreams and everything will be great. You know, it's follow your dreams because you get such great reward, but with that, it's really hard as well. But I think no matter what you do, I mean, nothing I think comes without its kind of difficulties. But I think we always assess and go, oh my God, should we keep going with this? And then you look at the alternative and go, absolutely, it's such a privilege to work for yourself and have your own company and make your own choices. I think that is, when you look at it and you kind of see it for what it is, you just go, actually, it's quite incredible. And I can't see us not doing that, you know, at all if we can help it. We're clinging on in there and making sure it works, and that really helps keep you motivated, I think.
Yeah,
definitely.
honestly, I can completely imagine, and I think it must be quite nice to have, you know, your own little support bubble, I think is the word that everyone's using at the moment.
Yeah,
It really does, yeah.
I mean, I took a salary job for 2 years, and I've got to say, the guy I was working for, probably the loveliest boss you could ever have, but I realized that I was only ever working for his dreams, you know, and then the company's dreams and the company's aspirations, and I was owned for 40 hours a week. I was owned.
Yeah.
You know, it had its benefits. That regular paycheck every month took a lot of stress away, but it also made me quite anxious inside because I wasn't getting to create or perform, and when I got to the end of my working day, I'd already given my best to my employer.
Yeah.
And so there was very little, you know, I just had to dig extra deep to go and train and start rehearsing. And, you know, after 2 years of that, I went, you know, that was nice. You know, the salary had sorted out our finances for a couple of years, but it was never going to be forever.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys work together, you live together, you've got a lot going on. Yeah. How do you switch off from that? Can you?
That is the difficulty, I guess.
That's the downside.
Because we do live together, and we have been together since we were teenagers, so we've had, you know, that childhood sweetheart kind of a thing. So we didn't work together at all for we spent time going off doing our own thing, and we came back together and we lived together, and we've both always been into creative kind of industries, but on very, very different ends of it. I was in the contemporary dance and kind of more theatre side, and Colum's in the music and bands, and the rock and roll and all that. But, so we always had an understanding of pursuing your kind of your dream as it is. So we never stopped each other, and I think that's really helped. And it was only when we started doing aerial, when we were in our about 26, 27, and that's the first time we started doing stuff together, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we did it as a hobby, actually Colm dragged me along, even though I'm a dancer, I'm not good with heights. So I do aerial, and I'm not exactly hugely fond of them. So, and that was part of my reason to keep going back to it, was a massive challenge, and I like a challenge, and I like to not let a fear overcome me. So it was a really good kind of way of going, no, I'm not going to let this stop me. And I really liked the strength I was getting from it and getting to do stuff together. So, up to then we were always like, oh, we'd never work together. I don't know how people could do it. And then it just really naturally happened, and it's great. We are really different kind of people too. So when we work creatively, he's like a boundary pusher of let's get up there and do this move, and I'm like, what? I'm not going up there. And we meet in the middle, so I stop him from killing himself. And then he gets me off the ground and actually up in the air, and somewhere in the middle we create this lovely stuff. So I think our differences are actually really good, and some days we come out of the studio and we're like, this is amazing, and then other days we leave going, I don't think we should do this anymore.
Now, I don't know how they do it because I am terrified of heights, but a massive thank you to Mona and Colm. I'm sure I'll be catching up with them very soon. But coming up next on the show, you might remember our previous guest, Mark Barfoot. Well, he's going to perform live right here in the pit. Take it away, Mark. A massive thank you to Mark, and I'm sure we'll be seeing more performances from him in the coming weeks. But coming up next on the show, we have a scorcher of a guest for you. Carolyn sits down with contemporary dancer and fire performer Tony Elwin.
First of all, let's focus on the fire situation. Are you not terrified when you do it?
I was at first. I was really, really scared of like body burning and touching it on my skin. But no, as soon as you sort of like learn the safety of it, like whenever I teach people, I always tell them not to be afraid of the fire, because that's when you'll flinch and have an accident, and you might, if you bail, that's when you can hurt yourself. But you also need to respect that it can kill you. So you need to sort of find that balance of like not freaking out, but being very aware. Yeah, it's like being in the room with like an angry dog. You just need to.
Oh God, I don't know. You're not really talking me into it here. So, have you sustained many burns in your career?
Yes, I set my head on fire. So I was using a prop called poi, and it's a ball wick on the end of like a chain. So I was spinning that, and I was so excited about a move that I'd done that I didn't come out of it properly. I just put my hands down and I clipped the back of my head and set it on fire. I just heard like and it was a bit warm. I managed to tap it out and it was fine. But I'd taken all the safety protocols, they were all in place. It was just a really, really hot day, and it just, yeah.
Oh, amazing.
wasn't my luck.
Yeah, no, honestly, it's so interesting. So do you say that you also teach that as well?
Yeah.
So is it something that's quite popular? Do many people want to learn?
Yeah, weirdly, it took off. It took off more than I thought it actually would. So I'm part of a troupe called Dracaris, and we sort of put the feelers out at a couple of like adult dance studios and like pole and aerial studios, and to see if it was something people would be interested in. And we'd just have a day where we'd bring lots of fans, and people would sort of learn some of the basic techniques, some of the we'd make like a short sequence for them to learn, and then we'd move on outside and do fire safety, and they can light them up, have a play with them, they'd all be spotted. We teach them how to spot everybody. And then they can have a look at some of the moves they've learned and try them on fire, see what they think.
Yeah,
it's good fun.
Oh, it really does sound so exciting. As I briefly mentioned before, your job, when you were describing what it is that you do, all of these different things, it does sound quite glamorous. Probably not to you, because it's just your everyday life.
Yeah.
But for somebody that, doesn't necessarily experience that all the time, it does sound amazing. Is it? What's the reality?
It's not glamorous at all.
It's hard work, I can imagine.
Yeah. So I mean, it looks like you're in control when you're sort of like eating fire and body burning, but you go home, you have to blow your nose because it's thick of black soot. And there's a lot of sequins getting stuck to fishnets. So if you sort of like crouch down, you stick to your thigh, and you have to kind of glamorously
tug yourself out.
Yeah, it's all about sort of you have a persona when you're doing it as well, and making it look glamorous. I quite like doing comedy roles. So if I do any walkabout entertainment, if I'm ever like a clown or like a playful character, I quite like those, because if you make a mistake, you can just be silly and have fun with it.
Yeah.
I was working in a nightclub, and I was a clown. I was sat on the couch, and the couch completely tipped over, and the other clown just started helping me, and we were sort of like, oh no, and we were helping each other up, and everyone just had a good laugh. Whereas when you're dressed as a showgirl and you fall,
yeah, you've almost got to be like...
Yeah, you can't really recover. If I ever do that, I just sort of find a pause on the floor.
Oh, well, no doubt, so effortlessly as well, because I couldn't do that.
But then you have to sort of glamorously pick yourself up.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, it sounds absolutely amazing. So, to me, quite clearly, you are super creative. Is that something that runs in your family, would you say? And is that kind of creative seed, shall we say, always been there? Or is it something that you kind of started and then grew with quite organically?
Yeah, so my dad is very, very creative. So my dad is a musician. He's an artist as well. So he's blind, so he finds different mediums of doing it. So he paints, he draws, charcoal, things like that. And he has like his own studio where he'll like produce music, and he actually produced a lot of the music for shows I was in from like the age of 9 at my dance school.
That's amazing.
Him and my mum have both been so supportive. So when I said I wanted to do dance, they would take me along. My mum doesn't drive, and it wasn't worth her travelling and coming back, so she would stay there, and she ended up being the tuck shop lady. And then she would take everyone's subs, and she would just sort of do everything there. So they've always been super immersed in anything I've done. And when I studied at London, even though my dad couldn't see any productions I was doing when it was just dance, he would come along to the shows and like surprise me there.
Yeah.
He'd always come along, and he'd always be when the music would stop, you'd always hear him woo. He'd always be the first one to cheer.
That's amazing. So you've clearly had so much support.
Oh, absolutely. I've been really lucky, because a lot of people don't want their kids to go into performing arts.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because we've interviewed quite a lot of people, and I always like to kind of find out a little bit about their like past and kind of like when they grew up, did they have support? Because so many parents, as you just said, don't love the idea to begin with, and it's almost you've got to convince them why it's good, and
yeah, absolutely.
It's almost seen as not necessarily a real job, which I hate even saying that, because
the worst phrase in the world, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
A massive thank you to Tony. Hopefully we'll be getting her in for a performance, at a safe distance of course, very soon. But last up on the show, we have some local fashion from Verity Velour Vintage, brought in association with Delightful Tack.
Okay, I'm Melbourne, and my business is Verity Velour's vintage store, and I'd like to think my alter ego was Verity Velour, so I come as her. Okay, so we sell vintage homewares, tea sets, home items, sort of retro furniture, and also vintage clothes and accessories. Mainly on Etsy. It's Verity Velour Vintage.store, and then you can find me there.
Next time on Sessions from the Pit.